You didn't know this about Reavers. All right, this is
You
probably going to be
guys
helpful
must
to
be a
me.
lot of so today I wanted to explain the annoying clunkiness of scare-ups, as well as talk more broadly about weapon ranges in StarCraft. To understand what it is that makes scare-ups so weird, we need to acknowledge what they really are. And under the hood, they are just a unit. They aren't actually a projectile, because those don't have collisions and don't perform pathfinding. They are an invincible, very small unit that does not fly, does not float, and has to get around obstacles
Is this in the map editor? How do people do this? It must be, right? Or did he actually open up the code?
to hit. This makes them really unwieldy for a multitude of reasons. Reavers can't shoot through terrain gaps and can't even really shoot through a pack of units. But what makes things even more confusing is that they have a limitation where they can't shoot if the scarab would have to travel through a distance that we could describe as more than 3 pathfinding regions. The actual limitation is related to how distance is checked in cases where the scarab would have to travel through more than 2 regions, because legal scarab range is checked based on how the river will path between pathfinding region centers, and it just works out in a way where the distance between them is so large when 4 centers are involved that it's almost always too long for the
So
river to think that
these red markers, is this basically like collision data for the scarab?
it can fire. Furthermore, if the scarab cannot find its target for too long, for 90 frames, which is about 4 real-life seconds and fastest, it times out and dies, dealing no damage. In my pathfinding video, you have seen how much of a mess the pathfinding regions can be, even on pro maps such as our beloved fighting.
Yeah, this is like if you've used Reavers, getting them to fire up or down ramps. Sometimes I can't. I'm really curious if we're going to figure out here, but yeah, there's moments where it'll just walk into the target instead of shooting.
1.3, there are a few places where a river cannot utilize its theoretical maximum range of around 256 pixels. Admittedly, Fighting Spirit is a very good map in terms of pathfinding. If the case I've mentioned before happens, that is, there are too many regions for the scarab to travel, the river will instead walk to the closest region that can allow the path to be short enough for the attack to be legal, which is the cause of rivers walking towards whatever they were targeting, like sunken colonies, in a suicidal manner. For a bit of fun trivia, scarabs don't actually have to be bound by such pathetic concepts as collision or gravity. You can make them fly. In fact, I did that in my UED AIP mod. It makes rivers less cumbersome to use as a combat unit, more effective in the hands of the AI.
Oh, okay. This is just him changing the properties in the map editor. Yeah.
Note that since the initial pathfinding check is based on what the river could travel and not what scarabs can do, it will only allow rivers to attack within the same legal distance mentioned before. But once the scarab is out, it's a free-for-all. It can jump over anything it wants to. Finally, to show an example that's a bit more relevant to unmodded StarCraft, blessing scarabs with wings would completely fix one quite ugly issue where scarabs trying to path into units that are right in front of the river force some of them into a pathfinding panic mode, where those units temporarily ignore collision. This can start a chain reaction where more and more units enter each other's collision boxes, panic, and try to push each other away. Of course, since we have been talking about rivers and scarabs and all that, it only makes sense to touch upon how range in general works in StarCraft. I'm going to explain this via an example that may seem a tad specific, but I feel like it not only covers everything you would need to understand weapon range, but it also explains away most of the inconsistencies you'll see. When you stick your dudes into a bunker, you might be vaguely aware that they are supposed to gain some bonus range.
Yeah.
Typically, this is explained as +1 range. What it really means is that while they do get an extra 32 pixels of range, their range is now checked from the middlemost pixel of the bunker. If you have played a game like League of Legends or Dota, you may know that ranges can be measured in different ways. Sometimes you may be counting distance from center to center of an attacker's collision to the target's collision, whereas at other times it may be edge to center or any combination of those two. While in Brood War, weapon ranges are measured edge to edge. This causes them to get pretty wonky at times, because units may have a different size in pixels between their left, right, top and bottom side.
Huh.
For example, a bunker measures 24 pixels top, but only 17 pixels down, as well as 32 pixels to the left and 33 pixels to the right. You might have noticed that these sizes are slightly different than what's displayed in the bunker's data entry. While that's because 0x1x0x1 is the smallest possible unit size in Brood War, and as such the one extra down and right pixels are always added in a game but not seen in the editor. The fact that units in a bunker check range from its centermost pixel makes the 32 pixel range bonus way worse than it sounds on paper. But this is very much a special case, which results in some extra weirdness that veteran Terran or Zerg players might have stumbled upon once or twice. Take note that whenever we see range in the debug I'm using, it is displayed as a circle. This isn't quite accurate, but we'll get to that in a second. Now that we know bunkers give the units inside a flat 32 pixels.
By the way, this is how I beat the campaign when I was a kid, is I filled bunkers with ghosts because they had crazy range. It's so funny.
Bonus, but only have 17 pixels to edge when something is shooting at them from their bottom side, you may notice that bunkers get almost half a range point of an advantage when they are being shot at from the bottom, compared to if they were being shot at from the side, because the units inside of the bunker are firing from the center and get that 32 range bonus, but an enemy unit would only need to target a bunker's edge. When approached from the right, they actually lose one effective pixel of range. I'm sure this actually came up in a pro match at least once. The related Terran-Zerg interaction that I've mentioned is that Sankens may or may not outrange bunkered up Marines with U-238 shells depending on...
You know what's funny? This explains a lot. Because there's these moments where you'll have like a Protoss cannon rushing a Zerg, and the Zerg's making Sunken colonies, and like sometimes it looks like it'll hit, but it won't. Same with a bunker, where you'll have a bunker finish and it looks like it's in range, but it's not. But so that's fascinating. So really the range originates in the center of the actual unit. I didn't realize that. So when you have something like this that's slightly off center, it doesn't quite reach the target.
The angle. If we just tried taking simple ranges into account, the ones you might find, for example, on Wikipedia, this doesn't make much sense, because Sunken Colony's 7 range is bigger than a bunkered up Marine's 6. But the quirkiness of this interaction does not quite stop here. Range in StarCraft is not actually measured in a circle from the attacking unit. Instead, unit range is checked in a dodecagon, which is a 12-sided polygon. It looks something like this. The yellow outline would be our expected range if we were checking in a perfect circle, whereas the blue outline is the dodecagon. The extra range it affords us, in this very specific example, should be enough for this Marine to just barely hit that Zergling. It's even easier to see this in motion. The actual range is obviously different than if it were a circle. You can see how this Dragoon can aim at a cannon very slightly outside what would have been its circular range, but it can't reach a Zealot that's only slightly further away. The actual added dodecagon range is around upwards of 8%. These kinds of interactions aren't actually all that specific. We have seen them with Sunken colonies and Dragoons, but basically any combination of ranged units probably has some weird angles at which one can...
Yeah, this makes sense too. If you guys watch the stream, you notice it's really tricky to get the Dragoon to fire at the bunker, but also be out of range. Like it's such a... And at certain angles, it's harder than others. Like if you're directly below it, I always find it's very difficult to try to get the Dragoon to get at that right angle, where it's still hitting the bunker but out of range.
Even Ultralisks can sometimes make use of their dodecagon-shaped range and hit a unit on a different elevation level in certain tile sets. Thank you for watching, and I'm hoping you guys will stick around. There's plenty of bizarre things in StarCraft to talk about, and I would love to keep making these videos as long as someone finds them interesting to watch.
Really
I'll
good
be reading all the comments,
channel.
So fire away if you have any questions, and if you want to support me, remember to like and subscribe.
Who's this guy's channel? This guy needs more subs. Necron. 607 subs. Definitely, you're gonna get a sub from me, buddy. Boop. Very cool stuff. Very illuminating, actually. It's funny. You can just open up the hood, kind of see what the parts of the toy in a game that is so weird and mysterious.